move on to questions now. Again, if you have questions, there's still a chance to write them and submit them, and we'll get to all our questions. And we're going to start our first question. Congresswoman Noem, the question is, the Farm Bill in both houses of Congress saves over $15 billion in the commodity title. If we extend the current Farm Bill and share in the savings come from in the future, and where will it come from crop insurance? It's where will the savings come from in the future, and will they come from crop insurance? And also, with that, what measures can be taken to protect crop insurance? I can repeat that since I stumbled through that. But.
Well, thank you for the question. It's a good one, because as I travel across South Dakota all the time and talking to producers and my neighbors, the number one thing that they say to me all the time is that we need a strong safety net, that we need crop insurance, and we need to make sure that that stays in place. And so that's been our goal. The Senate, when they passed their bill, did so, as did the House when they put together our bill in the Ag Committee meetings. We strengthened crop insurance and made sure it was going to be there and be a safety net going forward in the future. When talking about cuts and reductions in spending, the House bill has more reductions in spending, recognizing the fiscal crisis that this country faces. And it does it in the food stamp portion of the bill. We put some reforms in place to protect the integrity of the program and to make sure that those who need that program and need food stamps get it. That's the reason we don't have a farm bill today, folks, and that's why it hasn't passed the House floor. Traditionally, historically, always in the past, the Farm Bill has been a bipartisan bill that we work together on and get done. In fact, when we passed it out of the Ag Committee, it was 35-11, and Democrats and Republicans worked together to do that. I will tell you that the reason we don't have the Farm Bill on the House floor today is because the vast majority of Democrats are walking away from the bill because of reforms to the food stamp portion of the bill, and they're holding our ag producers hostage, wanting their demands met in that program. And that's why I'm fighting and making sure that we bring that bill to the floor. It's very important that we do, and that's why I voted no on adjournment. We shouldn't be coming home, we shouldn't be doing anything except talking to people and getting that farm bill done, because it's that critical for our ag producers.
Okay, thank you, Matt. A rebuttal on that. Again, extending the current farm bill, where will the savings come from in the future? Will they come from crop insurance?
Well, it's very important that we keep a strong crop insurance program, because as you travel the state and as you talk to producers, and I'm sure many of the people here agree, we are willing to get rid of direct payments and counter-cyclical payments and make that contribution to deficit reduction, which we must do. But we got to preserve that strong safety net, and the core of that safety net needs to be crop insurance. The problem is right now we don't know what kind of safety net we're going to have, because there is no farm bill. The current farm bill expires September 30th, and as Congresswoman Noem said, members of Congress are now in their home districts campaigning for their re-elections. They're not working out a farm bill. And it's fine to say that some people in the House should be supporting it who traditionally have supported it in the past. Since Representative Noem is the leader of that freshman class group, you'd think she'd be focusing her efforts there trying to persuade more people to support this bill, but we don't see that. Now, there is a path forward. The Senate passed a great bipartisan bill, or a solid bipartisan bill at least, with 64 votes. And again, Senators Johnson and Thune supported it. The House could take that up, and I expect it would get a great deal of support. The other path, the bipartisan path that's going on right now, is there's a group of Republicans and Democrats in the House who want to force a vote on the Farm Bill, even though John Boehner doesn't want to vote on the Farm Bill. Now, my opponent at one time supported this idea. In fact, she went so far as to sign a letter explaining why it was a good thing to force a vote. But then when asked about it publicly, she said no, she doesn't support a vote. So she had a change of heart, and there's been coverage in the DC media indicating that that may have been because she got pressure from leadership to side with them and not side with us. I want you to know where I stand. I support forcing a vote on the Farm Bill. I think we need to get this resolved and end the uncertainty you're facing. I think my opponent should change her position back to the original one and support forcing that vote. Now's the time to be aggressive.
Okay, moving on to the next question here. This is good. Well, quickly, you get a quick rebuttal. I'll let you do that, and I'll judge that, so quickly.
Well, I will tell you, there was so much spin on that story, I'm surprised Matt didn't fall out of his chair. Because I've never once said that I didn't support a discharge petition. I'll tell you, we've got to get that farm bill to the floor, and we've been working to gather the votes. I've told all my leadership team that if we do not have a farm bill scheduled for a vote when we get back to Washington, that I am going to be carrying the charge on that discharge petition. It's that important for our South Dakota farmers. It's that important to make sure we have certainty in an industry that has held up the middle of the country and feeds our people with a safe and reliable food supply, and that's why I'm going to continue to push for that if we don't get that vote scheduled right away when we get to D.C.
Okay, we're going to move on to another question. Thank you. We'll continue on, and both candidates will get a close at the end. So this one for Matt, and what specific steps would you take in Congress in the next year to protect the RFS? Specific steps on protecting RFS.
Yeah, the RFS has been very important to South Dakota's economy because ethanol has been a great industry for South Dakota's economy. Now, this is a tough time we're going through with this drought situation, with corn prices at levels we haven't seen in a long, long time. And there is pressure from some in Congress to relax the RFS. And they tell us it'll be on a temporary basis, but I wouldn't trust them when they tell you that. And I think we do need to stand strong for the RFS, and we should not make short-term decisions until we know what the situation is going to be here. Now, the USDA recently revised the crop estimate for corn, I think 17% down. But even at that level, it's still going to be the 8th largest harvest, according to what I've read. In addition, now that more cattle producers are relying on distillers' grains, the impact of sending corn to ethanol plants is not as significant as it once was on livestock producers. And so I think if we let the RFS go now, if we buckled under the pressure of the big oil companies that do not like ethanol, we would regret it longer term, because biofuels, both grain-based and cellulosic, are a key part of our energy future long term. We need the diversity that they provide. We need the reduction in gas prices that they provide. We need the additional markets that they provide for our grain producers. And so I would strongly stand up for the RFS and explain why those opponents are wrong on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Congresswoman, protecting the RFS in the next year.
Absolutely. There's no doubt that this drought has impacted a wide swath of people that we're facing right now. I think back to the 70s when we had a drought as well, and I remember my dad going to Canada every Sunday night to get hay to bring back to feed the cattle. And we had to haul them all the way to Wyoming to make sure that we could keep them through the summer and didn't have to sell them off. So there's a lot of people that are suffering in much that same way today. And I know that it is impacting all different areas of agriculture. The supplies right now currently don't warrant a waiver from the RFS. I believe that we need to have an American energy plan, that we need to rely on all sources of energy we can generate right here in America. We need to quit relying on the Middle East to bring us energy to fuel our tractors and our trucks as we do our work. I want to incentivize ethanol and biodiesel that we have here at home, and wind and oil and coal and everything that we can get right here at home that people can generate. It needs to be very important that we continue to incentivize our American energy policy, incentivize and keep that here. What concerns me is that my opponent has spent the vast majority of his past and his life trying to pass a national energy tax that would tax energy that we all need to run our farms. And for those of you who maybe don't know what a national energy tax, basically it's where the government comes in and says, you are allowed to use this much energy. If you use more than that, then that is going to be taxed by the government. The PUC here in South Dakota said that would increase your electricity bills by 50%, and nobody can afford that. That's the kind of policies that we're talking about that cannot have place in this country, and why we need to incentivize relying on ourselves to produce our own renewable energy supplies.
Quickly on RFS. Rebuttal on RFS.
Yes, and also on the last point my opponent made, I don't know what you are talking about with this proposal you say I supported. I produced your transcript, but I'd like to see one piece of paper that shows me supporting what you just said. It's false, folks. Now, on the issue of the RFS, one difference we do have, and I'm glad that we both support the RFS strongly, but one difference we do have is that I'm willing to stand up to big oil companies who are the opponents funding the effort to weaken the RFS. My opponent, on the other hand, has taken thousands and thousands, I think something like $70,000 from big oil companies like ExxonMobil PAC and Valero PAC. They are funding her campaign. They're funding some of these t-shirts that are here at this event. That's true, folks. And those companies do not support ethanol. We need a member of Congress who stands up for ethanol, and I won't take a dime from big oil.
Jerry, just let me say one thing. If I'm friends with Big Oil, somebody forgot to tell them, because their friends of Big Oil right now is running a radio ad attacking me for supporting renewable fuels. So it just doesn't hold water, Matt. You just can't make accusations without backing them up.
But is it true that you've taken $70,000 from ExxonMobil, etc.?
I have had some contributions come in, but as have you, and you're invested in the Big Oil. So I would say that what we need to do is to continue to focus on supporting ethanol that we can grow right here in South Dakota and has been so good for our agriculture industry. We need the government to stop picking winners and losers all the time. We need the government to make sure that we're supporting agriculture, making sure it has the opportunity to thrive and survive, and not put it in jeopardy the way that it has in the past.
And again, you'll both get a close here to make points, so let's move on to our topics. I do want to take one moment here as one more appropriate place in a debate at Dakotafest in Mitchell, recognize former South Dakota Senator George McGovern, who is with us. Senator. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your service. Moving on here as we cover more ag topics, Congresswoman Noem, will start with you on this question on disaster assistance. Ranchers across the country began to liquidate herds. Will we have a livestock disaster program this year? And what's the best way to provide long-term livestock disaster assistance? And would it involve protection, rather, similar to crop insurance?
Well, the best thing we can do to make sure that we have certainty for our livestock producers as well is to get a 5-year farm bill done. And that's why I've been working so hard to make sure that we get it there. Circulating a letter, getting 79 other members on a letter saying bring it to the floor to our leadership team. Circulating another letter, telling our colleagues to go home and get more support from their neighboring districts. And then also telling my leadership team this week that we need to have a scheduled vote or it will be forced to the floor. We need to get that done. Now, I recognize there was a flaw in the last farm bill. The last farm bill that was put together was a 5-year bill, but it only put livestock disaster programs into place for 4, which means that in 2012, there's no livestock disaster programs out there for our guys that are raising and producing beef and other industries here in South Dakota. So back in April, I introduced legislation that would reauthorize those programs. Make sure that we have those coverages in place because livestock producers don't have the opportunity to get crop insurance like our commodity sides do. All they have is the protection in those programs. Now at that point in time, we didn't know we had such a severe drought. But boy, when we worked to get that bill put together and the farm bill, and we're working on it for the months prior to it, I made sure that those livestock disaster programs were put into the farm bill. And they were in the bill and I championed them as they came through the House Ag Committee. And we need to make sure that we get those put into place and get a final farm bill done. But the House also stepped up and did something extra. In light of the fact that we don't have a disaster program right now, we passed one a couple of weeks ago before we came back saying that our livestock guys deserve to be covered. We're waiting on the Senate to do that, and the President, we don't feel that they should have left town until they made sure that those disaster programs were in place for 2012 to bring some relief to our livestock guys and make sure that they have a safety net, much like our commodity producers do.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Varilek.